This is a topic that can profoundly change your life and your experience of reality for the better. It is knowing or learning to discern between knowing from the mind and knowing from the body. And what I mean by that is understanding and processing reality and moving through it in a certain way. So are you using your mind to do that or your body? And so in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the difference between the two, some of the negative consequences of living from a mind-centric place, how you can integrate them more together, and then giving you some practical techniques for how to do that and like day-to-day ways of living in a much more embodied way to get better results in your life and also to live an easier, more spontaneous life. But we'll get into that. So let's jump in. So why does it matter? We live in an incredibly, mind-centric society. Copernicus and Descartes, these revolutionary scientists, sought to cut out subjective experience and above all sort of emotions and emotionality, the gut, the heart, these parts of us from their methods of knowing the world. And it turns out that this, although it has certain advantages, has massive disadvantages which have not been acknowledged. So we've all learned to be in the world through the mind. But it's like the mind is just one way of knowing. It's like one thin sliver of knowing reality. And so, and it can do that thin sliver very, very well, but you're missing a whole host of other frequencies, of other ways of knowing reality that are just as valid and carry huge amounts of wisdom and information. When you're just using your mind and you're completely disconnected from your intuition, your truth, your desires, your authenticity, your values, your gut, your heart, your love, your joy, these things have an impact, a huge impact on how you experience reality and what reality is. It's living from the mind is just like you're trying to know what television is, say, for example. It's like, what is the field of television? But you're only tuned into one channel, right? Just the mind. And so if you're only tuned into that one channel, you get a very, very narrow sense of what television is. It's like, well, television is just war and nature documentaries, right? Because you're tuned into the Discovery Channel. And it's like, well, that's just all that television is because, I'm using this one channel to just see what it is. But actually, the field of television is much, much broader. You've got cartoons and you've got rom-coms and you've got anime and you've got like Antique Roadshow, you got reality TV, you got the news. Like there's a whole host of all kinds of rich, deep veins of exploration that are completely different. And your intelligence, your knowing of reality is the same. It's like there are these different frequencies that have different flavors, just like television. And so you're really cutting yourself off. When you just operate from the mind, you're cutting yourself off from the vast majority of intelligence, creativity, and wisdom. And you are only ever going to have an incredibly partial view of reality. And you'll be very, very detached and cut off from, feeling very lacking, like life is very dry and flavorless because you're only tuned into that one channel and there's hundreds of others. And just think about it, like the deepest truths of our life are felt, right? It's like I said, that intuition, that the sense of the truth of ourselves, our authenticity, our desire, like what we value, just what we're going for. We're always going after feeling. Even if you're trying to understand the world, you want the feeling that comes when you understand the world because you feel safe or accomplished or something. It's all about feeling. The next point that's really important here is that the issue with relying on the mind is that the mind lies. Like you can't trust the mind, whereas the body never lies in comparison, right? The mind is very biased in favor of your psychological defenses, and it actually wants to keep you away from your body. When you're disconnected from your body, your mind is your number one protection mechanism from that. So it ends up being very compensatory, very protective, very repressive of many parts of you. It's the tool you've used to repress many aspects of yourself. The body, on the other hand, although it has its defense mechanisms, it tends to be, if you feel afraid, that's not like a lie. That's never a lie. Whereas your mind can tell you, oh, I'm not afraid, and you are fucking afraid, right? But the body, if you feel fear or if you don't feel fear, that's the truth. You can't hide the fact that you're afraid. You can distract yourself from it or try and numb out to it. But you can't really hide it in the same way. So the body's a much better tool for the truth of who you are. And therefore, because you're not separate from reality, the truth of reality itself. And you find that when you start to integrate them together, you don't want to, I'm not suggesting here that we don't use the mind. I'm suggesting we integrate the intelligence of the mind with the intelligence of the heart and the gut and the other aspects of intuition and truth and the body. And what happens is that you then have that edge, that sharpness of mind and that rationality, but it's tempered with much more intuition and heart. And you end up going through the world in a much more attuned way that's much more spontaneous, much more responsive to what's going on, and much less, how would you say, like sort of detached and calculated and cold. It's very separate, the mind. It just divides everything up into little blocks and tries to chop and that doesn't feel good. And it's quite, you ever met someone really anxious who's constantly trying to calculate everything? They're not having a good time. This is not actually intelligent. It's actually highly dysfunctional, and we're too reliant on that mind. Ironically, when we're over-reliant on just rationality all the time, being rational, that's a form of fear that's very dysfunctional. So how can you tell when you're operating from mind and when you're operating more from the intelligence of the body? So it's worth saying that both of these are distorted by trauma. And I talk about that at length in other videos, what trauma is and so on. But essentially it's like the conditioning, the repressed emotions held in your body. So like if there's a lot of fear held in the body, for example, you'll see your mind will be being leveraged or utilized through the lens of that fear. So the thoughts you have will be much more fear-based. The same goes for understanding the wisdom of the body, actually. If there's a lot of fear in the body, the response you get will be tempered and filtered through that distorting lens. So that's the case for both, and you have to bear that in mind. But there are some rules of thumb that I find really helpful. So you can tell you're in the mind because it's very repetitious. The information you get from the mind just goes again and again and again. It's like that same anxiety about your boss. Say you're anxious about your boss next week, something next week. It'll just repeat that thing. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? It'll just hammer home the same worry again and again and again. It's very, very repetitious. It's also long-winded. So if you're trying to calculate or figure out, like, should I go to this event next weekend? The mind goes, well, there's this and there's that, but I've got to consider that. And then Sally, she might be going earlier, so maybe I could get a lift with her. But she doesn't, she was feeling a bit off with me last time, so I don't know if I can ask her. So maybe I might get like Bill to ask her because he kind of knows her better. And it just goes on, and it's very, very long-winded. And then it'll just do that, looping that over and over again. Those are the two main signs you're operating from mind, right? And it's exhausting. The information, the intelligence of the body, on the other hand, tends to be much more short, to the point, and it really resonates with you, and it'll only say it once. So if there's some insight you need from life that comes from the heart, the gut, it will say it once, or only a few times. So you'll be feeling into some question. It's like, should I leave my partner? And you'll just go yes, or it'll say no. And it won't give you some long, elaborate reason why. It won't hammer the point home repeatedly. You'll just get a sense of like, no, yes. Maybe with something else, a bit of a trauma distortion might be like, yes, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid to. And it's like, that's where you want to be, in that felt sense of just real simple responses that don't have a ton of rationalization to them. It's just truth delivered once, to the point. That's it. And you can accept it or you can reject the truth. That's up to you. But that's how you'll receive it. Now, how do you bring these together? Because like I said, I'm talking about them in quite separate terms. You can bring them together, and they can influence each other, and they can work together. And that's when you're really cooking with gas. That's when you really start to become like quite an insightful, wise person in the world. And the way you want to do that is, I'm going to assume most people are very familiar with the intelligence of the head, right? So you really need to get into the body and start to open up the nervous system and process all the stuff, or get in touch with the body first, really connect to the body, learn how to speak to the body, to listen to the body, and process what it's been holding, all the trauma and conditioning. I've got lots of videos on how to do that, so check out my videos on how to feel your feelings, for example, or other ones on trauma. but that's the basic sense. You want to really get into the heart, because it's like we're closed off from the heart and the gut, from the defenses of the body, because it was unsafe to be in touch with those emotions, to like freely express love or affection felt, really terrifying. Or maybe that the fear in our gut, it felt really scary to expose that to the world and let people see that. So we had to push all this stuff down. So the body, often we're very numb to the contents of our body. And so we really need to bring safety to the body. That's the key. We disconnected from the heart and the gut, essentially because it felt unsafe. And so the first port of call is to really bring safety to the body. You can check out my resourcing video on how to do that. So just Google on my YouTube, just look up resourcing, because that's the practice of creating safety in your experience. And then just repetitiously getting in touch with it again and again. And then you can learn how to talk to parts of you, like the heart, the gut, right? The different emotions, the different parts of you, which essentially you've got to treat them like people with individual selves. Your heart has like an individual self. It has like a perspective, a history, beliefs, fears, desires. And you can just put your attention there and just start to talk to it. I've got more information on how to do this in my video. It's called something like How to Get Started with Somatic Healing Work by Yourself. There's a section there on talking to the body, communicating with it. And there will be a future video on that because I think it's really important. Essentially, you're just doing the healing somatic work. And as you do that more and more and more, your nervous system opens up more and more and more as it feels safer and safer to let out what's been held down there. And as that comes up, the amount of distortion in your experience starts to reduce, and the purity of the intelligence that you start to receive increases. The noise to signal ratio goes down, so you have more signal and less noise. When we're very numbed out to the body and it's full of trauma and repressed emotion, that's a huge amount of noise, and it's very hard to discern the clear signal of what our truth is, right? Of whether we need to go right or left or stop or forwards. And what we're doing is then connecting with the body, helping it feel safe, processing that stuff, purifying that signal of intelligence and truth. What are some techniques for how to do this more practically day to day, or how to listen to your body more? A really good one is to not engage with the mind in a yes or no way. So often thoughts will come up with the mind. Say it's like should I go out with this person? Right? Or should I had one recently. I was like, it's like, should I go to this event? Should I go to this festival? It's like, I could go to this retreat, or I could go to this festival. This was a choice I was making recently, right? And the temptation is to go into the mind and think it through and just engage with the thought. It's like, oh, but what about this? It's like, there's that, but there's this, but what if this happens? And I really want to have that, but I don't want to miss out on that. And you just loop in this mire of trying to predict the future endlessly. You're endlessly trying to predict the future, and you can't. Instead, watch the thoughts. Just watch these concerns come up, but don't do anything. Just wait and just feel into the body. Just feel. Wait. And you'll find that the more you just listen and wait, that at certain junctures arise when decisions are made by themselves spontaneously in a much more natural way, rather than trying to we have this sense of grinding our way through the decisions in our life. Two parts of our mind are loggerheads. I want to go to the retreat. No, I want to go to the festival. I want to go to the retreat. I want to go to the festival. They're just like this. You just let them sit there, and eventually they flow past each other, and you find yourself just making a decision very spontaneously and naturally. It just happens. Your body just flows if you just have that patience. But you've got to build up to that, build a bit of trust in the body and the system, right? Another one is to trust the felt sense above all to make decisions. As a decision maker, the mind will try to add up what's rational and reasonable based on societal conditioning. It's like, I should take that job because I'll earn more money. But this is not the way to make a decision. It's way too disconnected from who you are. What's much more important is the truth of who you are. And you can feel that in the body. It's like, should I take this job? And you can feel the yes or the no in your body. And if you're unsure, it's because there's still too much of that distortion. There's too much fear in the system. There's a yes down there somewhere. For example, there might be a yes, I want to do that job, but there's a fear about money. And so that fear of money will be clouding that clear yes coming from the body, which is that noise to signal I was talking about, right? But again, over time, you can get better and better at discerning that felt sense of like yes or no. And the more you go with that felt sense of yes in your life, with the people you hang out with, the things that you do in life, the job that you do, all that stuff, the more you go with the yes, the better your life will be, I promise you. And the more you trust the no's you get as well, the better your life will be. Then the last point I already mentioned is just talking about like really feeling the feelings to reduce that distortion. So if you have that fear there, like working through the fear first, and then sit back and listen and wait without that fear distorting your perspective. And then you should be able to slowly over time, integrate that embodied cognition, embodied intelligence more and more and more. And it's like you really got your finger on the pulse of life, and you can just go through. It's like you're surfing this wave of intelligence that's guiding you this way and that. And that's not always in fun ways, right? There are challenging experiences that come up with that, but it's always the ones that are most beneficial for you in the long run. So that if you start to live this way, I promise your life will change in ways that you could never have fucking imagined. It certainly happened with me, with the kinds of people in my life and the things I guess I get to do, and the degree to which I feel like I can be myself in my life. Whew, that'll do. If you have any questions, ping me a note. I help people with this. I work with them one-on-one. I work with them one-on-one to do somatic work, healing work, to help people connect to their bodies and themselves. So if that sounds interesting, then check out my website and drop me a line. Bye.